Buongiorno.
Good morning, and welcome. Let's start with this morning session by GfK. We are going to start with a study by Sinottica. So GfK has started a new business unit dedicated to eyewear and sunglasses. So we are going to present a study on sunglasses. So we designed a map trying to explain the rationale behind the sunglasses market. So just a couple of words on Sinottica. As we said, it is a proprietary research by GfK going back to 40 years of history, and the aim is that of studying individuals at 360 degrees. Individuals are not just consumers, but they are complex beings with specific decision patterns and habits. Sinottica basically studies by interviewing 12,000 people per year what the main features of individuals are associated with their exposure to different means and devices. We will see that we are also exploring the different contact methodologies, and we also study the consumption patterns of the individuals. As I said, in the past years, we have developed the part dedicated to fashion, to apparel, to accessories, and to optical devices as well, to sunglasses and spectacles. Let's see briefly what we did. So we basically used the hundreds of thousands of variables within Sinottica to try and explain the decision patterns within the sunglasses market. We asked the system to explain the different selection patterns for various brands by using the psychographic, the attitude and behavioral variables that we have within the Sinottica research. As a result, we obtained two dimensions, two axes, where we set the different variables by classifying different approaches to the sunglasses market. In the first axis, you see different groups of individuals. On the right-hand side, for example, we see the so-called trendsetters. Trendsetters are very dynamic people, keen on experimenting, on exploring things, people who get a lot of inputs, who play a very important role in social life. These are people who like challenges, changes and novelties, and they also have the resources, both cultural, critical and financial resources, to face and tackle novelties. Hence, these are the people who are able to capture novelties first, and they are also able to transfer them to other individuals in their society. On the opposite side, on the left-hand side of the axis, you see the so-called followers. Followers are those who are much relaxed, much more moderate vis-à-vis their life. They have a rather traditional approach towards life, and as a consequence, they also have a different approach to consumption, to fashion and accessories. They tend to choose what they already know. They also have more limited resources, both financially and culturally. Another dimension is about the approach to style, to fashion, to accessories in general. On the top, we have people seeking an exclusive style. These are people who are very keen on image, on what they tell about themselves. And we can also say that at the top right-hand side of the map, we will see people who really embody the idea of classy, sobriety, etc., because this is part of their DNA. On the top left-hand side of the chart, instead, we find people who are both exclusive and followers, but they are rather traditional. They tend to repeat their choices. We will see they are rather classical people that have and pursue a classical elegance. On the opposite side of the axis, towards the bottom of the chart, we find people with a much more functional, pragmatic style. There, we find individuals that, on the right-hand side of the map, consider style as an important feature. However, this is only one of the various inputs they get in their life. And considering the needs they have, especially in terms of time saving, they are choosing something very casual, very informal, very sporty. On the bottom left, instead, we find disengaged people, so people who are not very interested in style, and hence they make very simple decisions out of practicality and functionality. So what did we do? We took both dimensions, we crossed them, and we generated some sociological and mathematical areas explaining the different dynamics that characterize the sunglasses market. So what you see in the middle is how the people whom we interviewed are distributed within this sociological area, and how variables are within this framework, and how they explain the people they belong to. Let's start at the bottom left, at the bottom right. So the right-hand side of the map, as you may have already understood, is the most interesting part. So the bottom right field is very interesting. So young people, males, with very good financial resources. They are people who have a very busy life with many engagements, with many commitments. They need beautiful, fast things and also very pragmatic things, and as a consequence they make very pragmatic decisions in terms of casualness, of sportiness, but they are also very interested in novelties and new trends. So this field is very interesting in this perspective. As we move upwards, we find a more feminine context, and here people are older. This is the focus of glamour and fashion. These are the people who give a lot of importance to accessories, to sunglasses, to fashion in general. These are people who like trying and experimenting things. They tell something about themselves through fashion and accessories. However, these are people who tend to do this for their own sake and not for other people. This is part of their own personality. And so here is where novelty is. All new trends get into this part of the map. Moving towards the left, we find, as we said, a more traditional approach. Here individuals tend to opt for well-known brands, for a more classical style. There are no novelties here. And at the bottom we find we find mostly male consumers looking for pure rationality. In other words, sunglasses have to fulfill a function. It doesn't matter what they represent to me or to other people, or whether they are beautiful. This tool becomes then a very operative tool. Today I'm just going to give you a general overview explaining the rationale behind this map. However, what generated this map are the different brands for sunglasses. Let's see how they can be integrated into this map. At the bottom part of the map we find the real sunglasses brands. Here we have retailer brands. So we said this is the pure functionality box, and here we find the retailer brands. On that side we find brands which are specialized with sunglasses. At the on top we find high fashion brands. On the right-hand side, the most trendy and innovative ones. On the left-hand side, the more classical ones. Let's have a look at other market variables. As you may imagine, on the right-hand side of the map, there's more volume, we can say, because these are the people who have many pairs of sunglasses, especially at the top right. And these are the people who spend more money. Where do they buy? Well, women here tend to buy everywhere. And we also have online sales, which are very successful in this quadrant. And this quadrant instead, with more pragmatic individuals, we have consumers who tend to buy at opticians. Here we have, let's say, this is the third box of the map in terms of financial expenses, and this is not because they cannot afford to buy multiple sunglasses, but simply because they think that one pair is enough, and they tend to buy sunglasses in malls. And in this case, we have individuals who have only one pair of sunglasses. They don't spend a lot. They are the smallest spenders, and they tend to buy at the closest optical stores. What else can we do with Sinottica? As we can see which means are used, we can also explore how we can approach the different target groups. Here we can see that on the right-hand side of the map we have multimedia consumers that can be reached in multiple ways, especially here on top. So you see individuals who read almost everything, magazines and newspapers, they watch TV, they listen to radio, they go online. So this target group can be easily approached due to the amount of media they use, and also because they are very keen on this topic. At the bottom we find again a multimedia target group, but very selective individuals. They don't have so much time, they are less interested in this topic. And the most important media here is, of course, the internet, followed by press, radio and cinema. On the left-hand side of the map we have mostly adults, older, so the press is and television, magazines and radio are the most frequently used media. This is a tool that we have developed recently and that should be monitored in time. The brands that we have just seen in the different parts of the map may move as time goes by, approaching different targets. So by keeping the individuals unchanged and within the same fields, it will be interesting to see how brands will move through time. It is a very operative tool that can be used especially by the marketing units of companies to better understand the strategies, and media as well, in order to see how target groups can be approached. Thank you very much.
Okay. Now this section is going to be in English, and the tone will be slightly different. We're now going to look into practical details. Okay, we've got an agenda, and you have to bear with me. We are going to have a couple of self-promotional charts at the beginning, apologies, and then we're going straight into the topics of today's conference. So just a very quick presentation and introduction of GfK. We are the only global market research consultancy company specialized in this very specific market space. The presentation you are going to see in the next 40 minutes will all be based on our core product, which are the sell-out retail tracking data, following which there will be a section on consumer. Now, I said that we are the only global company specialized in this very specific market space, which is quite unique, quite remarkable, because it's mixing in the same retail environment products totally different. We know that there are different degrees of technicalities around these gentlemen, usually wearing a sort of doctor uniform. They can be ophthalmologist, optometrist, optician, dispensing optician, according to where they are. The peculiarity is that in the same retail environment coexist products and, let me say, industry operators with totally different souls and approach to the market. On one end, we have the semi-pharmaceutical derivation of pharmaceutical companies. So here we got Vision Care, and the players in this market space are Novartis, Johnson & Johnson, big pharmaceutical company. On the other side, and this is the typical example here at Mido, we move much closer to the world of fashion, fashion accessories. So the engagement of consumers to generate revenues is totally different. Our job is to help our global client company, our local companies, and also retailers to make successful business decisions. We've been expanding our presence throughout the last, let me say, all the continents in the last few years, and we keep expanding. I hope because we've been relevant. What we are basically doing, therefore, our job is to try and help retailers and companies which are represented in our eyes through the absolutely the core point, which is the optical shop. And we basically help companies to understand, anticipate market trends. We help our optical shops to make successful category management decisions, and in the end, help the industry to give to the consumer what the consumer is expecting. So, as we've been talking about a retail environment, let's start from the first, let me say, piece of information we can have on retail. Let's start using an indicator which is not a GfK one. This is an official one, a government one. It's the confidence index. This is basically tracking the way consumers perceive about the external world and the attitude towards spending. In the moment in which there is a macroeconomic, let me say, slowdown, and we come from some years of crisis, the confidence tends to diminish. In the more recent years, the confidence has been increasing. So if we look that the attitude of consumer to market spending is increasing. It would be interesting to compare this picture with what actually the people who own the economy, the central banks, think about the economy. Well, here the view is totally different. The three leading financial institutions in the world, the Federal Reserve in USA, the BCE of our friend Mario Draghi, and the Bank of Japan, all project a very negative environment. So, two completely different messages. What can we do to understand what is exactly going on? Well, the only way to do it is to look at the real consumption. So, GfK data. What you see here, the name is not great. We call it Temax. We are a consultancy company, not a marketing communication company, clearly. The name is not very evocative, but it's basically representing approximately 100 industries. So what you see up there is the evolution. Let's try to compare how this has evolved compared to optics starting from some years ago when the macroeconomic crisis around the world started. And this is therefore looking at what is happening today and how it evolved. We can see, first of all, that the first impact was quite complex, both for the total economy as well as for optics. But then, when we start coming in the evolution, the immediate follow-up to the 2009 crisis, we could see that optics start showing quite resilience to economic crisis, behaving better than all the other industries. And this trend was confirmed when there were the first sign of recovery. And today, where also the economy is speaking, we can see that optics somehow has managed to stay competitive. So something incredible happened in this market space. I would like now in this presentation to try to help you understanding the decision that opticians and the industry, the companies, have done in order to remain successful. First of all, it's interesting to start from a total mapping of the industry. This is the way we were looking at the industry some years ago, in 2008, before the crisis. One big product group of ophthalmic lenses dominating, and then, of course, contact lenses, frames, and sunglasses. It's interesting to see how these evolved throughout the years, and basically what we can very clearly see is that there is one product group, the leading product group, which is absolutely the one which has been growing dramatically in importance and also in terms of absolute price positioning across time. We can also say that if we look from a more tactical way and we try to reproduce the core product of the industry, this one, that the industry has been vertically consolidating across the core part of the business. So this is what is absolutely leading the market, the complete pair of glasses. I don't need to make any comment about what is happening in the industry, but this is clearly a strong message that we can see. However, it's going to be interesting now to see how tactically each specific product groups has reacted to this situation in the last few years. Let's start from a tactical product group, contact lenses. Well, what you see here is the mapping before the crisis of new products in contact lens and all products. And what is very clearly to be seen is how much the industry, in a moment of economic crisis, has repositioned towards the premium part of the market, which has been the one having an impact. It's very interesting to compare this information with the modality of contact lenses, because new products have been going towards the daily frequency. If before we said that optics proved to be resilient to crisis, and we also observed that contact lenses were somehow performing before better than optics in a moment of crisis, here you can understand from a retail perspective where is the tactical use. The first rule of retail is to generate traffic in the store. How do you generate traffic? You generate traffic by getting the clients coming back. So this is tactically the use of daily contact lenses. The second part, of course, is to convert sales and possibly upgrade sales. So the move towards premium prices. That is absolutely the research of opticians to have clients and generate margins. Of course, when the macroeconomic scenario is complex, consumers tend to look for opportunities. So internet has been growing dramatically and starting to somehow compete towards the traditional brick and mortar optician. At the moment in which there is a channel competition, what is the first line of defense of any retailer in the world? Well, private labels or trade brands. This is exactly the first line of defense which has been used in the industry. And we will see that this is happening also across the other product groups. Let's now move towards the eyewear market and start from sunglasses. What we are seeing here is the market by price positioning before the crisis and during after the crisis. What we can really see very strongly in terms of trend is what has been described and which help consultants to make a lot of business, trying to help companies understanding what happened to the mid-tier client, because clearly the market is positioning itself towards the premium and the bottom part of the market. Now, another very important thing which is happening, and this is directly correlated to the move towards the core product, towards the complete pair of glasses. We said before that the industry is consolidating across its main product. And in fact, what we can see also here is that the movement is more towards the technical solution. So we can see how trade brands are dramatically increasing. We can see the strong performance of house brands and unfortunately also quite a slowdown of licensed brands. We can also take a look in GfK at how pricing has evolved, and we can see that pricing is somehow reflecting this, because two segments of the market very healthy growing, the fashion one somehow struggling and using price to reposition itself. However, I am not delivering the message that there is a crisis in the premium part of the market. Absolutely not. But if we take a tactical look, and now we are looking at the top 10 product, we have to see that if we want to look for the first fashion brands, we need to look at 21st, over 20th place. And if we compare these 2 years ago, you can see very clearly also not just in terms of macro trend, but also in terms of products or collection, how there is a progressive move in this direction. But what is very important to underline is that if we now look at one part of the market, the premium part of the market, here we use one of the nice indicators of GfK because we're looking at the distribution. So we're looking at the distribution in optical shops of this segment of the market. And here we look at turnover share, which is the importance within these optical shops of this segment. What you can see is that before the crisis, this was the level of distribution and the market share. When the crisis started, it was expected a lot of opticians started destocking this premium product somehow, repositioning towards other products. Our job as consultant was to actually advise on the contrary. And in fact, what is happening today is that for all the opticians who decide to stick to the premium part of the market, therefore less optician, there's been a fantastic growth. So this was an excellent opportunity. The advice here at time of crisis, resist the temptation to change your portfolio towards the bottom. Now let's take a look at frames, which as we saw are a very strong product and performing very well. Here there is a slight difference towards sunglasses because this category has been growing across all product, let me say, price positioning levels, but the same dynamics are occurring also here. So the premium and the bottom part of the market are absolutely the one leading. Another important information is about materials. And again, there are very, very strong indications that the market is moving in one direction. And this is something that I've been personally telling some of my friends, manufacturers, that they need to keep in mind. Of course, the part which used to be so important and leading, it's somehow struggling, and also in terms of price positioning. Now, what is happening about house brands, license and trade brands? The situation is not so strongly clear like in the sunglasses segment, but the generic trend are still the same. There is a bit of a slowdown of licenses, still growing, however, but clearly the market even here is moving more towards the technical solutions, so the trade brands. This is, as we saw, happening in frames, in sunglasses, and in contact lenses. So this is quite a common situation. Now, the same exercises we did before, it's similar, but of course less evident. The importance of brands here versus sunglasses seems to be stronger, even though we still observe some slowdown compared to some years ago. What is happening now if you look at the overall category management in stores? Well, there are a couple of information here. The first one is that the importance of the top 10 it's somehow decreasing. This is basically, and you can see here, due to the fact that in a market where house brands and trade brands are entering more and more, the number of overall categories and the average number of brands per shop is also evolving. So this is a market which is moving fast, and of course it's important to stay online with it. If now we take a look at spectacle lenses, the other very strong piece of information, very clear, is that the industry is always more and more in Europe investing towards the premium part, the progressive lenses, the one used for people of my age suffering from presbyopia, of course, and this is absolutely driving the market. At the same time, we are also looking at a progressive repositioning towards higher refraction indexes, also for the mono glasses, which is quite interesting. Within these big movements and big scenario, the general macro trend is that organized distribution has somehow managed to intercept more these opportunities on the market compared to the very important independent channel. Independent still absolutely representing the very important part of this business, but clearly in terms of category management, in terms of, let me say, way of to the market, it seems that the movement are going more in the direction of organized distribution, chains, etc. Another very important thing, however, is to take a long-term look about the real category management. And this it's very interesting because in terms of models, we can clearly see that across this long period, all the product groups have been increasing. The only exception is solution for contact lenses. But this is due to the fact, as we reported, that the industry of contact lenses has been moving towards daily products, whereas this is more a product for the reusable contact lenses. Something similar is also happening in terms of brands, where we see a substantial stability of a, let me say, traditional spectacle lenses market, but all the other segments growing with the exception of care products. So, at Mido, as you know, we always present for the first time the year-end data. So let me present this and see if a short-term look at the market, the tactical look, is confirming the strategic look we just saw. First of all, let's see how the industry has been behaving. And substantially stable, slight growth. We're looking, of course, at value growth. More than 17 billion euros, so for Europe 4, quite a remarkable industry. France is, of course, leading, and the impact is coming from the spectacle lenses market, triggered by the second pair of glasses, of course. And if you look at how the market been behaving, well, very strong performance in France. Italy has been performing well. France somehow stable. Spain, again, is showing to start slowing down. This at macro level. Let's take a look now in terms of products. And here, again, looking at the very latest data, we can see how big is becoming now the role of spectacle lenses, which are absolutely dominating the market. And what is, again, confirmed is that sunglasses are somehow slowing down. The vision care part is growing, but the part which is growing faster, confirming this trend, is again the core product of spectacle glasses. Let's take a look at how all these segments have been behaving, and I must report that in terms of price positioning, the premium part of the market is the one which has been growing across all the different product groups. It's interesting to take a quick look at eyewear, how in the premium part we are seeing that this strong performance is mainly coming from the women models, but also very interesting to see how in terms of material the combination, which is still small, but is the one which is starting to have an impact. If you look at spectacle lenses, again, we confirm that both the monofocal and progressive lenses are behaving extremely healthy. So, what are the learnings here? The first thing is that good job on all of you. The industry has done a terrific job coming out strongly, even during a not very favorable macroeconomic climate, so good job. The secret formula has been a mix of portfolio management, and we saw how portfolio has evolved within optician and how, therefore, the companies who have intercepted this situation, these needs, have managed to be successful. The capacity of intercept sales, therefore, we take a look in details about more fashionable brands, the different frequency product in contact lenses, etc., very important. Something is happening to branding, and clearly the brand itself is somehow losing. Trade brands are really emerging very strongly. And of course, in terms of distribution, the things to be looked at is, again, this movement between independent and organized distribution and the multi-channel competition with internet, which it seems that the industry is still coping well. So this was a very quick look at the whole industry, and thank you very much. We are now taking a look at the consumer side of the business, and after that, if there are questions, of course, I will be around. Thank you.